When the Red Army first authorized the deployment of women in direct combat roles, it did not do so out of desperation. It did so to create a silent, precise weapon, difficult to detect and lethal at distance. Soviet female snipers were not auxiliaries or propagandistic symbols. They were an integral part of the war machinery that advanced over Eastern Europe and brought the war to the heart of the Reich. Their training was rigorous, their objectives enemy officers and strategic positions. Their effectiveness unleashed increasingly violent retaliatory measures from the enemy. Many of them fell before seeing victory and others were captured. How was this tactical elite formed in the midst of chaos? What differentiated them from the rest of the soldiers, and what was their brutal fate? Stalin's silent weapon, the birth of a lethal elite. In March 1942, while the Red Army bled on multiple fronts against the German war machinery, an unprecedented decision forever transformed the nature of conflict on the Eastern Front. The People's Commissariat of Defense issued an order that formally authorized the recruitment of women for direct combat functions. It was not a desperate measure, but a calculated strategy that recognized the specific advantages that female combatants could contribute in roles of extreme precision. The decree, signed by Marshal Kliment Voroshilov, established specific criteria for female incorporation in the sniper weapon. Candidates had to be between 20 and 45 years old, demonstrate superior physical aptitude, have complete basic education, and overcome a rigorous 4-day selection process. The tactical premise was clear: to create specialized soldiers capable of disorganizing enemy command through surgical elimination of strategic objectives. This policy did not arise from improvisation. During the 30s, under the supervision of Voroshilov himself, the Soviet High Command had developed a specific doctrine for the employment of snipers as a psychological warfare weapon. The elimination of officers, non-commissioned officers, artillery observers, and technical specialists could paralyze entire enemy units, creating a disproportionate effect with respect to the number of casualties caused. The Soviet General Staff had observed that women presented natural advantages for this type of warfare: greater emotional stability under sustained pressure, superior concentration capacity during prolonged periods, physical resistance to long hours of immobility, and outstanding abilities for stealth and camouflage. These qualities were documented by frontline commanders, who reported superior success rates in female sniper units compared with their male equivalents in specific sectors. To professionalize these combatants, the Central School of Snipers for Women was established in May 1942 in Veshnyaki, a suburb east of Moscow. This training center quickly became the epicenter of the most advanced tactical training in the world for military female snipers. The academic program had a variable duration of 3 to 6 months, adjusted according to the individual performance of each cadet. The curriculum was exhaustive and implacable. Future female snipers received intensive instruction in external and internal ballistics, distance calculation and wind compensation, camouflage techniques in urban and rural zones, infiltration and escape methods, and tactical terrain supervision. Each day began before dawn with a forced march of 20 kilometers, followed by controlled shooting practices at 400 and 800 meters, topography and compass orientation lessons, shelter construction, and self-sufficient survival. The pedagogical director, Nora Yegorova, was a veteran who had fought in the Spanish Civil War as part of the international brigades. She established a regime of iron discipline and technical excellence that eliminated all physical or mental weakness. Cadets who did not reach the established standards were immediately reassigned as radio operators or field nurses. The main practice field was located in Cosino, where real combat scenarios were recreated: complete trenches, artificial ruin zones, and forests adapted for guerrilla warfare. Cadets had to survive up to a week without contact with instructors, practicing long-range shots and covert operations under conditions that simulated the stress of the real front. The standard armament for graduated female snipers was the Mosin Nagant M 1891/30 rifle equipped with PU telescopic sight of 3.5 magnifications. This rifle, specifically adapted for snipers in 1932, had an effective range of up to 800 meters and had become the most reliable precision weapon in the Soviet arsenal. The PU optical sight was permanently mounted on the bolt box, guaranteeing stability and consistent precision. In addition to the main rifle, each female sniper received a Tokarev TT-33 pistol as a secondary weapon, camouflage uniform with spot pattern or civilian clothing adapted according to the operative sector, survival equipment that included waterproof canvas, dry rations, combat knife, compass, and official field logbook. They were also given a folding tripod for the rifle and visual blurring elements to break their silhouette. Each female sniper carried a casualty record notebook that had to be signed by the immediate superior after each confirmed elimination. Deaths recorded by sniper were verified by independent observers and subsequently reported to the general staff of the corresponding front. This documentation system guaranteed the precision of statistics and eliminated the possibility of propagandistic inflation of figures. Once graduated, female snipers were strategically distributed according to specific tactical criteria. They typically operated in groups of 2 or 3 per division, deployed in wooded zones, ruined villages, advanced lines, or retreat sectors where they could act from elevated positions or enemy blind spots. Their effectiveness was measured not only in casualties caused, but in the psychological impact on enemy troops, who were forced to exponentially increase their precautionary measures. The fronts where their employment was most systematic and documented included the Kalinin Front, where they stood out for eliminating German observers, the Belarusian and First Baltic Front, where they operated in offensives against supply lines, and the Ukrainian fronts, where they functioned as specialized support for light infantry divisions. Among the most successful units was the 100th Battalion of Female Snipers, created in June 1943 as an autonomous unit. This formation accumulated more than 12,000 confirmed deaths according to internal Red Army reports, becoming a symbol of the hidden power of Soviet troops. The unit operated with almost complete tactical autonomy, selecting its own objectives and approach methods. The integration of female snipers in the Red Army represented a silent revolution in Soviet military doctrine. It was not a concession to propaganda nor a social experiment, but a tactical decision based on concrete results. Female snipers became Stalin's silent weapon, a lethal force that operated in the shadows of the most brutal conflict in human history. Rosa Shanina, the invisible horror of East Prussia. In the military archives of the Red Army, few names appear with the frequency and consistency of Rosa Georgievna Shanina. Her trail was not hidden in the shadows of combat, but meticulously recorded in official reports, front newspapers, and personal diaries that survived the conflict. The story of this elite female sniper illustrates how a young kindergarten teacher transformed into one of the most lethal hunters of the Eastern Theater. Born on April 3, 1924, in the village of Yedma in the oblast of Vologda, Shanina grew up in a family of lumberjacks in the depths of rural Russia. After completing her pedagogical training, she worked teaching children in Arkhangelsk when the war erupted like a hurricane that would change her destiny forever. In December 1941, the news of her brother Mikhail's death in the siege of Leningrad prompted her to make a decision that would define the rest of her brief life. She voluntarily presented herself at the local recruitment office but was repeatedly rejected due to her age. Military regulations did not allow the recruitment of women under 20 years old for direct combat functions. However, Shanina did not abandon her objective. During 1942, she enrolled in the Vsevobuch military program, the mandatory basic training that provided fundamental military skills to Soviet civilians. Her persistence finally bore fruit in 1943 when she was accepted at the Central School of Female Snipers in Moscow. The training that followed was brutal and transformative. For 4 months, Shanina learned to become an instrument of precision warfare. She mastered the ballistics of the standard rifle, developed camouflage techniques that made her invisible in any terrain, and perfected infiltration skills that allowed her to approach enemy objectives without being detected. She graduated with honors in April 1944, especially standing out in long-range shooting practices. Her instructors invited her to remain as a trainer for new female snipers, but Shanina requested immediate transfer to an active front. Her military file confirms that she was incorporated to the front on April 2, 1944, assigned to the 184th Rifle Division of the 3rd Belarusian Front with the rank of sergeant. Her first operational deployment occurred during the Vitebsk-Orsha offensive in June 1944. In this sector, where the Red Army advanced against retreating German defenses, Shanina made her first documented eliminations. Her first victim was shot down on April 5th on the outskirts of Vitebsk, marking the beginning of a military career that would last barely 9 months, but would make her a legend of Soviet sniping. During the following 3 months, she participated in more than 12 operations documented by the general staff of her division. Official reports signed by her commander, Major Degtyarev, confirmed that by July she had reached 13 recorded casualties. Her effectiveness in combat earned her the Order of Glory 3rd Class on April 18, 1944, a decoration that was rarely awarded to such young soldiers. The Battle for Vilnius in July 1944 marked a turning point in her career. During urban combat in the Lithuanian capital, 12 additional eliminations were attributed to her, raising her total to 25. It was at this stage when she began to appear in the bulletins of the military newspaper Krasnaya Zvezda, being recognized as a symbol of the effectiveness of Soviet female snipers in urban operations. But what truly distinguished Shanina was the development of a lethal technique that she called doublet. This tactical innovation consisted of shooting twice during the same respiratory cycle, taking advantage of the minimal natural oscillation of the body to place 2 projectiles on single or multiple objectives in rapid sequence. The technique was extraordinarily difficult to execute with standard armament, which required manual reloading after each shot. In practice, Shanina used the doublet to eliminate 2 aligned soldiers or to quickly reach a second objective before it could hide after the first shot. Her field records document that she managed to apply this technique successfully at least a dozen times. In an operation near Kaunas, she eliminated a German commander and his observer in less than 5 seconds, a feat verified by the Soviet artillery observer present in the mission. With the Soviet advance toward the heart of the Reich, Shanina was deployed in East Prussia in September 1944. This zone represented the most dangerous theater of operations for any sniper. German troops defended their own territory with fanatic desperation, and the terrain was hostile, characterized by dense forests, bombed ruins, and fortified positions that had been built for years. It was in East Prussia where Shanina reached the peak of her lethal activity and where she would find her death. Operations in this region demanded maximum levels of precision and cold blood. The Germans had learned to fear Soviet snipers and had developed specific countermeasures. Specialized hunting teams, use of artillery against suspicious positions, and their own shooters trained specifically to eliminate enemy snipers. At the end of November 1944, according to the records of the 184th Regiment, Shanina accumulated 42 verified deaths. In December, her figure ascended to 51, and in January she reached the 59 eliminations that would remain as her final mark. Each of these casualties was recorded by her squad observer and validated in the daily combat reports that were sent to the front general staff. During her time at the front, Shanina maintained a campaign diary that is partially preserved in the archive of the State University of Arkhangelsk. The document is a fascinating mixture of logistical records, annotations about tactical positions, meteorological conditions, mission names, and reflections on her military decisions. The diary also contains technical notes about ballistics, methods to adjust the sight according to different visibility conditions, and simplified formulas to calculate distances according to the estimated size of objectives. A notable characteristic of Shanina was her insistence on recording only deaths that she had witnessed directly and that were verified by officers. In a diary entry, she wrote that she would never count a death that she had not seen or that was not backed by witnesses because figures were not medals but human lives. This meticulousness differentiated her from other snipers who included estimates or assumptions in their accounts. The end came on January 27, 1945, on the outskirts of Ilmsdorf during an advance operation through swampy territory. Her unit was attacked by German mortar fire while crossing an exposed zone. The artillery commander of her squad fell wounded by shrapnel, and Shanina, who had no military obligation to cover him, crawled to his position under continuous enemy fire. According to the report by Captain Vasily Merkulov, who signed the subsequent report, Shanina covered the wounded officer with her own body while other soldiers tried to organize an evacuation for him. During this action, she was hit by mortar fragments in the lumbar zone and torso. The wounds caused massive internal hemorrhage, and she died a few hours later without having received adequate medical attention due to the intensity of combat. She was buried by her companions near the place of combat, in an improvised grave identified only with her bayonet stuck in the ground and her military identification tag. Her death was formally recorded on January 28, 1945, exactly 3 months before the end of the war in Europe. Alia Moldagulova, the Wehrmacht's nightmare. The story of Alia Nurmukhametovna Moldagulova represents one of the most extraordinary cases of personal transformation documented during World War II. From her origin as an orphan in the steppes of Kazakhstan to her death in hand-to-hand combat at 18 years old, her trajectory illustrates how the conflict forged lethal soldiers from apparently impossible circumstances. Born on October 25, 1925 in the district of Bulak-Aktobe region, Alia lost her mother during childhood and her father was detained during the Stalinist purges. These tragedies converted her into an orphan of the state, transferred to Leningrad under the custody of her uncle, the military man Sabir Moldagulov. She was officially registered as a resident of boarding school number 46 of Leningrad, where her life passed with the ordered but impersonal routine characteristic of Soviet institutions. The outbreak of war brutally changed her destiny. When the siege of Leningrad began in 1941, Alia was evacuated along with thousands of other orphans toward the oblast of Yaroslavl, far from the German siege that strangled the ancient imperial capital. This massive evacuation, documented in the records of the Soviet Ministry of Education, saved her life but took her away forever from everything she had known. In 1942, with barely 16 years old and despite being below the minimum age required for combat, she voluntarily presented herself at a recruitment office in Yaroslavl. What convinced the officers to accept her was not compassion nor propaganda, but her outstanding academic qualifications, her excellent physical condition, and a natural marksmanship that manifested immediately during preliminary shooting tests. She was admitted as a cadet in the Specialized Academy in mid-1943. Her training lasted 5 intensive months that transformed her completely. During ballistic tests at the Cosino practice field, Alia demonstrated a dispersion deviation inferior to 1.5% at 600 meters, an outstanding performance even for veteran shooters. This exceptional precision earned her the privilege of receiving a personalized rifle, with the telescopic sight calibrated specifically according to her individual shooting statistics. Upon graduating, she was assigned to the 54th Independent Rifle Brigade of the 22nd Army of the Northwest Front under the command of General A.I. Novikov. This unit operated in some of the most disputed sectors of the front, where the war had become an endless series of attacks and counterattacks through swampy forests and fortified villages. Her first active mission occurred in September 1943 in the region of Velikie Luki, on the border between Russia and Estonia. During her first month of operations, she shot down 11 enemy soldiers, each elimination verified in the reconnaissance battalion reports that were sent daily to the front general staff. These first casualties immediately established her reputation as an elite shooter. In October, she participated in the liberation offensive of several strategic villages between Nevel and Pustoshka, a sector where the forested and swampy terrain favored sniper operations. Moldagulova and her squad operated as a mobile unit of specialized shooters, eliminating enemy surveillance points and providing lethal cover for the advance of regular rifle units. Her effectiveness was such that the record of the 54th Battalion, dated in November 1943, documents that she was assigned a personal observer assistant and received exceptional authorization to operate as an autonomous unit. This tactical autonomy was rarely granted to such young soldiers, but the results justified the confidence placed in her. During the brutal winter of 1943 to 1944, her activities concentrated on defensive positions in the frozen forests near Lake Nevel. In these Arctic conditions, where temperatures descended to 40 degrees below zero, she eliminated several German artillery observers and 2 enemy snipers in precision duels that could last entire days. The archived records demonstrate that in December 1943, her count of documented deaths ascended to 56 eliminated enemies. The annotations did not include estimates or assumptions. Each casualty had been personally signed by the section commander, Lieutenant Ivan Golikov, whose signature appears in all preserved documents. This meticulousness in documentation guaranteed the absolute accuracy of statistics. The operation that would mark the end of her life began on January 11, 1944, during an offensive of the 54th Rifle Battalion to break the German defensive line near the village of Kazachika in the region of Novosokolniki. The objective was to cross enemy positions and establish a bridgehead for the main Soviet advance. The operations report of that day describes how Moldagulova's unit was intercepted by heavy machine gun fire MG-34 from a fortified trench that dominated the entire advance sector. The enemy position was perfectly camouflaged and resulted invisible to Soviet observers, but the fire proceeding from it was causing serious casualties among the assault troops. Moldagulova received the order to neutralize the position from a lateral angle. According to subsequent reports signed by Captain Anatoly Surov, she moved crawling for more than 200 meters under continuous enemy fire, crossing completely exposed terrain where any movement could result fatal. Her approach took more than 3 hours, advancing centimeter by centimeter when German fire intensified. Once in position, she systematically eliminated 3 German soldiers posted at the extremes of the trench before shooting at the main machine gun operator. Her shots were executed with the characteristic precision that she had developed during months of training and combat. However, a German grenade impacted near her position, causing her wounds from splinters in the left shoulder and right thigh. Despite her wounds and blood loss, Moldagulova continued advancing toward the enemy trench. She changed her rifle for an MP-40 automatic rifle taken from one of the shot-down Germans, instantly adapting to enemy armament to continue combat. In the hand-to-hand confrontation that followed, according to Lieutenant Golikov's testimony included in the regiment's official report, she eliminated 3 other German soldiers and helped to completely clear the trench. The action allowed the rest of the Soviet platoon to advance and take the position, but Moldagulova received a direct shot in the abdomen during the last moments of combat. She was immediately evacuated to a field medical post where military surgeons fought for hours to save her life. However, the internal wounds were too serious, and she died on January 14, 1944, 4 days after turning 18 years old. Her service record, officially closed that same day, registered 78 enemies shot down with firearms in less than 5 months of active operations. This figure made her one of the most lethal female snipers of the Red Army, especially considering her youth and the short period of her military career. Tatiana Baramzina, the most brutal execution of the war. Among all the documented cases of atrocities committed against captured Soviet female snipers, none equals in systematic brutality and deliberate sadism the fate of Tatiana Nikolaevna Baramzina. Her story represents not only the testimony of an exceptional combatant, but also the most raw evidence of how the war on the Eastern Front transcended all conventions about the treatment of prisoners of war. Born on December 19, 1919 in Glazov, Udmurt Autonomous Soviet Socialist Republic, Tatiana grew up in a family that valued education and public service. She graduated from the Molotov Pedagogical Institute as a teacher specialized in geography, a profession that provided her with knowledge about topography and orientation that would prove crucial during her subsequent military career. When Operation Barbarossa transformed the Soviet Union into a gigantic battlefield, Tatiana made the decision to contribute to the war effort in multiple ways. First, she enrolled in a 6-month night nursing course organized by the Soviet Ministry of Health, obtaining certification as a field medical assistant. Simultaneously, she registered in a sniper course organized by the DOSAAF Society, where her geographical knowledge and natural coordination immediately distinguished her. During long-distance shooting practices, Tatiana demonstrated an exceptional aptitude that placed her among the best candidates of her promotion. Her ability to calculate distances, compensate for wind, and maintain precision under pressure made her an ideal candidate for advanced training, where she was accepted in June 1943. The training that followed was exhaustive and transformative. For 5 months, Tatiana mastered the use of standard armament, developed advanced camouflage and infiltration techniques, and perfected survival skills in adverse conditions. Her shooting record registered at the practice fields demonstrates a precision of 92% against moving targets between 400 and 600 meters. She finished her training at the end of 1943 and was deployed in the 252nd Rifle Regiment of the 70th Division, integrated in the 3rd Belarusian Front under the orders of Major General Ivan Galanin. During her first 3 months at the front, she accumulated 16 verified casualties, as recorded in the daily report signed by her unit commander. In mid-1944, the Red Army launched Operation Bagration, a massive offensive designed to liberate Belarus from German control and destroy Army Group Center of the Wehrmacht. Tatiana was assigned to an assault operation behind enemy lines near the village of Pekalin, with the objective of securing a strategic crossing before the arrival of the main Soviet Army Corps. Her battalion, the 3rd of the 252nd Regiment, was transported during the night across a river passage using light boats. They received instructions to maintain the position for at least 24 hours, providing sufficient time for the main forces to establish additional bridgeheads. On July 4, 1944, Tatiana deployed along with 47 soldiers in a forested sector near the village. During that day, she used her rifle with lethal precision to shoot down several German soldiers while providing tactical cover for her squad's advance. At the end of the day, the unit had suffered serious casualties, and several wounded were concentrated in an improvised shelter under an abandoned agricultural shed. The shelter was quickly converted into a provisional medical post where Tatiana could apply her training as a nurse. Her double capacity as a sniper and medical assistant made her a crucial element for the unit's survival. She decided to remain at the post to assist the wounded and continue fighting in case of enemy counterattack. During the early morning of July 5th, German troops launched a massive counterattack with mortar fire and hand grenades. According to Lieutenant Anatoly Borisov's report, Tatiana operated a light machine gun DP-27 to cover the shelter's right flank, eliminating 3 enemies who tried to approach through the most vulnerable sector. When the machine gun was rendered useless by enemy fire, she immediately resorted to her rifle to keep attackers at bay from a position fortified with sandbags. With only 14 remaining cartridges and no possibility of receiving reinforcements, Tatiana resisted for more than 2 hours against superior forces. According to the official report signed by the commander of the 70th Division, Colonel Vladimir Zamyatin, she was last seen throwing 2 hand grenades against an enemy trench that was approaching from the northeast, eliminating several German soldiers in an explosion that was heard kilometers away. Military records indicate that between 11:45 and 12:10 hours, the post was finally assaulted and taken by superior German forces. Most of the wounded and Soviet defenders were executed immediately on site, following the German practice of not taking prisoners in sectors where they had suffered important casualties from snipers. Tatiana was captured alive and taken to a German position situated 400 meters from the original shelter. What occurred during the following hours is documented with brutal precision in report number 447 of the 100th Rifle Division, dated July 6, 1944, when the Red Army retook the position the following day. The reconnaissance group that arrived first found Tatiana's body on the outskirts of the same shelter where she had fought. The forensic report, signed by Medical Commander Pavel Chentsov, meticulously describes the wounds she presented: deep cuts on the face and neck made with bayonet, stab wounds in the abdomen, massive contusions on the head and ribs, and an exposed fracture in the right arm that suggested systematic torture. However, the cause of death was the complete destruction of the skull by an impact from a 45mm cannon projectile, deliberately fired at close range. The projectile used was identified as a BR-240. Normally mounted on light anti-tank weapons, but also present in captured artillery pieces that the Germans used against Soviet positions. The degree of physical destruction was such that it was only possible to identify her by her characteristic braids and fragments of the uniform that bore the distinctive sniper insignia. The impact of the anti-tank cannon was officially described as deliberate execution, a form of murder that had no precedence or military justification whatsoever. The bodies of the executed Soviet soldiers were initially buried in a mass grave near the place of combat. Tatiana's name was registered in document number 1638 as one of the irrecoverable casualties of the 252nd Rifle Regiment, but her case was marked for special investigation due to the extraordinary circumstances of her death. On July 18, 1944, Colonel Zamyatin sent an urgent request to the Defense Council of the Belarusian Front requesting the posthumous decoration of Tatiana Baramzina with the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. The file included daily combat reports, survivor testimonies, forensic photographs of the remains, and the complete medical report that documented each wound inflicted. The documentation generated by her case became crucial evidence for subsequent war crimes processes. The photographs and forensic descriptions were used by Soviet investigators to document the systematic pattern of atrocities committed against prisoners of war, especially female combatants. Lyudmila Pavlichenko, the female sniper who conquered America. Of all the Soviet female snipers who participated in World War II, none reached the international projection nor the diplomatic recognition of Lyudmila Mikhailovna Pavlichenko. With 309 eliminations recorded in her military file, she became the most lethal female sniper of the Red Army and a key figure of Soviet propaganda during the most critical years of the conflict. Born on July 12, 1916, in Belaya Tserkov, Ukraine, Lyudmila moved with her family to Kiev in 1930, when Soviet industrialization transformed Ukrainian cities into centers of mass production. At 14 years old, she began training at a shooting club affiliated with DOSAAF, the Soviet paramilitary organization that prepared civilians in basic military skills. This early training proved fundamental for her subsequent development. For 7 years, Lyudmila participated in regional competitions and obtained multiple certifications as an expert shooter in long weapons. Her dedication to sport shooting made her one of the best civilian shooters in the Kiev region, mastering precision techniques that most soldiers took years to develop. In 1937, she enrolled at the University of Kiev to study history, a career that provided her with knowledge about military strategy, geography, and conflict analysis that would perfectly complement her abilities as a shooter. When the war broke out in 1941, she was already an advanced student with solid academic training and exceptional shooting skills. After the beginning of Operation Barbarossa, Lyudmila voluntarily presented herself at a Kiev recruitment office. Although initially she was offered a position as a nurse, she insisted on being assigned as a sniper. A shooting test at 400 meters immediately convinced the officers, her shots grouped in a circle of less than 5 centimeters in diameter, an extraordinary precision even for professional military standards. She was assigned directly to the 25th Infantry Division of the Red Army, one of the first units to enter combat in the southern sector of the front. She received her service rifle and was immediately sent to the front lines without additional military training. Her previous preparation at the shooting club had been so exhaustive that she did not need basic instruction. Her baptism of fire occurred on the Odessa front between August and October 1941. During 70 days of urban defensive combats, Lyudmila operated in conditions that favored sniper work, buildings in ruins, streets full of rubble, and elevated positions that allowed dominating wide sectors of the battlefield. Her casualty record during the Odessa campaign was meticulously documented by her superiors. Each eliminated objective was verified by an observer or member of her squad, following strict protocols that guaranteed the precision of statistics. During these 70 days, she eliminated 187 enemies, including 36 Romanian and German snipers, who had caused significant casualties among Soviet troops. Her technique during this stage was characterized by extreme patience and intelligent use of urban terrain. She could remain motionless for hours in the same position, waiting for objectives to expose themselves enough to guarantee lethal shots. On several occasions, she eliminated 5 or more enemies from the same position before changing location. When Soviet forces were forced to evacuate Odessa in October 1941, the 25th Division was relocated to Sevastopol on the Crimean Peninsula. Here began the second phase of Lyudmila's career, characterized by even more intense combats and more complex operational conditions. The defense of Sevastopol extended from November 1941 to June 1942, becoming one of the most brutal sieges of the entire war. Lyudmila operated in an environment characterized by trench combats, underground tunnels, and bombed structures where each position had to be conquered meter by meter. Her techniques evolved to adapt to this new environment. She developed methods to use elevated positions in destroyed buildings, taking advantage of the irregularities of rocky terrain to hide for entire days, and perfected the art of shooting from tunnels and natural caves that provided protection against enemy artillery. During this stage, she also began using the Tokarev SVT-40 semi-automatic rifle with telescopic sight, especially in situations where shooting speed was more important than absolute precision. This change of armament allowed her to adapt to different types of combat: the standard rifle for extreme precision shots at long distance, and the Tokarev for situations that required multiple rapid shots. In the reports of the 3rd Battalion of the 25th Regiment, it is documented that between December 1941 and February 1942, she eliminated 72 additional enemies, including at least 6 German snipers who had caused important casualties in her sector. These sniper duels could extend for days, with both shooters studying each other, calculating movement patterns, and waiting for the perfect moment for the definitive shot. In March 1942, she was promoted to lieutenant and authorized to direct a platoon of specialized shooters. This promotion recognized not only her individual effectiveness, but also her capacity to train and direct other snipers. At the end of May, her verified casualties ascended to 309, a figure that was officially recorded by the General Staff of the Southern Front. Her active career ended abruptly on June 2, 1942, when she was wounded by mortar shrapnel while moving toward a new shooting position. She was evacuated to the field hospital in Sevastopol and subsequently transferred to the rear for medical recovery. Although she physically recovered from her wounds, the General Command made the decision not to return her to direct combat. This decision was not due to physical incapacity, but to the recognition of her value as a propagandistic symbol. The Soviet High Command understood that Lyudmila could be more useful for the war effort as an international representative than as an individual combatant. Her personal story and her military record made her the perfect candidate for diplomatic missions in Allied countries. In August 1942, Lyudmila was assigned to a Soviet delegation that would travel to North America with specific objectives: to establish closer diplomatic links with the United States and Canada, generate public support for the opening of a second front in Europe, and demonstrate Soviet capacity and determination to resist the German invasion. The international tour began in Washington, D.C., where she was officially received at the White House by President Franklin D. Roosevelt and First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt. This meeting, exhaustively documented in the White House official photographic archive, marked a precedent. It was the first time that a Soviet combatant was received with honors by an American president. During her stay in the United States, Lyudmila participated in press conferences, radio interviews, and meetings with unions and women's organizations. In each public appearance, she wore her complete military uniform, with all her sniper insignia and decorations visible, creating a powerful visual impact that contrasted with American expectations about Soviet women. Her message was consistent and direct. She described the conditions of the Soviet front, explained the urgency of opening a second front to relieve pressure on the Red Army, and provided concrete data about German casualties caused by Soviet snipers. She never made emotional declarations, nor delved into politics beyond the specific objective of requesting Allied military aid. In Canada, she met with army officers in Ottawa and participated in public events where she was symbolically decorated by veteran organizations. In the United Kingdom, she visited armament factories and was received by representatives of the British Army, exchanging technical information about sniper tactics and specialized equipment. As a gift during her tour, she received a Winchester rifle with telescopic sight of American manufacture, a piece that represented international recognition of her experience as a sniper. This rifle is currently preserved in the Central Museum of the Armed Forces in Moscow, where it forms part of a permanent exhibition about Soviet snipers. Upon her return to the Soviet Union in November 1942, Lyudmila was received with honors by the Commissariat of Defense. The Presidium of the Supreme Soviet awarded her the title of Hero of the Soviet Union along with the Order of Lenin and the Gold Star. Her military file was archived with the final figure of 309 documented casualties without propagandistic adjustments or data inflation. After her complete recovery, she was assigned as an instructor at the Central School of Snipers, where she trained new generations of shooters until 1953. Her teaching methods were based on real combat experience, and her technical reports on long-distance shooting became standard manuals for Soviet snipers. Nina Lobkovskaya, the commander who conquered Berlin. The story of Nina Alexeyevna Lobkovskaya represents the logical culmination of the Soviet female sniper program. a 17-year-old young woman who ascended to command more than 100 female snipers and participated in the most important military operation of World War II, the taking of Berlin. Her trajectory illustrates how the Soviet system of military formation could convert adolescents into lethal leaders capable of directing complex operations in the most intense war theater in history. Born in 1925 in Western Siberia, Nina grew up in a family that had directly suffered the Stalinist purges. Her father was arrested during the 1937 raids, and her family was marked by the stigma of being relatives of an enemy of the people. This early experience with state tragedy forged in her an iron determination that would subsequently manifest in her military career. In 1941, with barely 16 years old, and while the German invasion transformed the Soviet Union into a continental battlefield, Nina presented herself as a volunteer to join the army. However, her official enlistment did not materialize until 1942, when she turned 17 years old and could be legally admitted to the specialized academy in Podolsk, near Moscow. Her training developed during the brutal winter of 1942 to 1943, in conditions that eliminated any candidate who did not possess exceptional physical and mental resistance. Sources from the Central Russian Military Archive confirm that Nina overcame all shooting tests with outstanding scores, mastering standard armament with a precision that placed her among the superior 5% of her promotion. What distinguished her from other cadets was not only her individual ability with the rifle, but her natural capacity for tactical leadership. During simulated combat exercises, she demonstrated aptitudes for coordinating teams, evaluating terrains, and making decisions under pressure that marked her as an ideal candidate for command positions. Upon graduating, she was designated commander of a platoon composed exclusively of women, 108 elite female snipers. This unit formed part of the Third Shock Army of the Belarusian Front, a formation specialized in urban assault operations and breakthrough of fortified lines. Nina's assignment as platoon commander at 18 years old was extraordinary even for Soviet standards, where the youth of officers was common due to the enormous casualties among command personnel. Soviet doctrine for snipers in urban warfare recognized their specific strategic value. These soldiers had to operate in advanced positions, establishing themselves in ruins, partially collapsed buildings, or elevated structures from where they could cover the advance of regular infantry troops. The female snipers under Nina's command were trained specifically to neutralize enemy observers, artillerymen, and hidden shooters in urban positions. Her first important operation occurred during the Vistula-Oder offensive between January and February 1945. Nina's platoon had a crucial role securing river crossings and neutralizing German observation points that dominated Soviet advance routes. The operation reports of the Third Shock Army register the elimination of 47 enemy elements in the suburbs of Kustrin, attributed directly to female snipers under her command. The coordination of 108 female snipers in simultaneous operations required exceptional organizational skills. Nina developed a signal communication system that allowed directing concentrated fire against multiple objectives without revealing the positions of her subordinates. Her methods included constant rotation of positions, coordinated use of distraction fire, and infiltration techniques that allowed establishing female snipers in territory controlled by the enemy. The culminating moment of her career arrived with the final offensive on Berlin, which began in April 1945. Combat conditions in the capital of the Third Reich represented the maximum challenge for any sniper. Intensive urban combat, desperate German defenses, and the need to advance meter by meter through devastated streets and fortified buildings. Nina and her platoon were deployed in the Second Soviet Offensive Ring, with the specific mission of cleaning sectors already taken of German snipers left behind who continued causing casualties among advanced troops. This task required extreme patience, detailed knowledge of urban combat, and capacity to identify enemy positions camouflaged among rubble and destroyed structures. During combats in the Kreuzberg district, her unit eliminated 14 enemy shooters in 3 days of continuous operations. Nina coordinated these actions from a command position established in the building of the Ministerium für Ernährung und Landwirtschaft, from where she could direct coordinated shots toward objectives in the Tiergarten and surrounding sectors. Her personal technique as a sniper had been refined during years of combat. She developed specific methods to identify enemy positions through minimal clues: curtains moved by wind, reflections of telescopic sights, cigarette smoke patterns, and subtle changes in the disposition of rubble that indicated the presence of hidden shooters. This ability to read the urban battlefield made her an exceptional hunter. During the final combats around the Reichstag between April 28th and May 2nd, Nina participated directly in suppression operations of German sniper nests in structures that surrounded the final symbolic objective. Her platoon neutralized multiple positions that threatened Soviet assault units in charge of taking the German parliamentary building. Although she did not participate in placing the Soviet flag over the Reichstag, a fact reserved for regular assault infantry, her unit provided lethal cover that allowed Soviet soldiers to approach the building without suffering excessive casualties from enemy sniper fire. Documents of the Third Army confirm her presence in this historic operation. Nina Lobkovskaya's official elimination record ascends to 89 enemies shot down personally. This figure was verified in a memorandum of the Ministry of Defense of the USSR archived in 1946. The objectives included mainly artillery observers, machine gun operators, and enemy snipers eliminated in precision duels. Nina operated preferentially with the standard rifle equipped with telescopic sight for extreme precision shots. But during the final phases of the war, she also adopted the Tokarev SVT-40 semi-automatic rifle adapted for snipers. This dual armament allowed her to adapt to different types of urban combat: the main rifle for long-distance eliminations, and the Tokarev for situations that required elevated shooting cadence. Her characteristic technique included the intelligent use of elevated positions and constant rotation of location to avoid being detected by enemy snipers. In subsequent interviews, she declared that the key to survival was never remaining more than 2 shots in the same place, a rule that she had developed after observing how less experienced snipers were eliminated for staying too long in compromised positions. After the fall of Berlin and German surrender on May 9, 1945, Nina was decorated with the Order of the Red Star, the Order of the Patriotic War First Class, and the Medal for the Liberation of Berlin. Her decorations recognized both her individual effectiveness and her exceptional capacity to direct a unit of female snipers in complex operations. Unlike other famous Soviet female snipers, Nina did not become an international propaganda figure, nor was she sent on diplomatic tours. Her career continued within the Red Army, where she served as a sniper instructor until her retirement in the 60s. This longevity in military service indicates the official recognition of her abilities as a specialist trainer.